I was just about to head out the door with a thermos of my mom's homemade chicken soup, ready to surprise Emily at the office where she'd been working overtime all week, when her message hit like a slap in the face: I have a boyfriend. Let's delete each other. Thanks. At first, I thought she'd sent it to the wrong person. I even chuckled. Thought, wow, how considerate of her to send her breakup script to the wrong dude. Nice one, Emily. I calmly sent back a single question mark, waiting for the follow-up laugh or explanation. But what I got instead was the dreaded red exclamation point message: failed to send. That's when it hit me. My girlfriend had a boyfriend. And apparently, it wasn't me. I stared at my phone, the message echoing in my head like some kind of bad punchline. My girlfriend has a boyfriend? Then who the hell am I? For the past few months, Emily had been working late nearly every night. I thought she was just under a ton of pressure. She always brushed it off, said she was busy but missed me, said she was working hard for our future. And I believed her. I even pitied her for it. I was the fool packing soup. The guy on the sidelines. I didn't even hesitate, I called her immediately. I wasn't even sure what I was going to say, just needed to hear her voice and figure out what kind of sick joke this was. But instead of Emily's voice, I got some smooth, low male voice answering with, "Who's this?" My blood pressure spiked. I paused for a second, confused. "Put Emily on the phone," I said coldly. The guy gave a short laugh, like I'd told a joke. "Looking for Emily? She's busy right now. Doesn't have time to entertain clingy exes." My hands clenched the steering wheel. "Sir, I suggest you have some self-respect," the guy added mockingly. "Emily has a boyfriend now. Quit pestering her. It's pathetic." Then he hung up. That was the moment the temperature in my car dropped 20 degrees. I didn't even think. I started the engine and floored it straight toward Carter Group HQ. If Emily Carter really thought she could just toss me out and replace me like a disposable coffee cup, then she'd better be ready for the fallout. When I pulled up outside the building, it was already past 9 p.m. The place was mostly dark, except for the lights on the top floor of her office. I nodded briefly at the security guard, who looked up and smiled politely. "Evening, Mr. Walker." "Picking a mess." "Carter up again?" I didn't respond. Just walked straight past him into the elevator and hit the top floor. The building was dead quiet until I reached her floor. That's when I heard voices, multiple voices. "A meeting? This late?" I pushed open the glass doors of the executive floor, expecting to see her alone with that man from the phone, maybe cozying up behind closed doors. Instead, I walked right into a full-blown business meeting. The room was packed. A dozen or more people sitting around the long conference table, all heads snapping toward me the moment I walked in. I froze for a beat, then spotted him instantly. The only one who didn't belong. He sat slouched in the corner, arms crossed, wearing a long gray coat like he was in a teen drama instead of a corporate office. He smirked at me with the kind of look that screamed smug entitlement. And that's when Emily stood up. "James," she said, clearly surprised. She got up from her chair and walked toward me. She looked a little nervous. A little pale. Maybe even guilty. "What are you doing here?" she asked softly. I didn't respond. Not yet. I was too busy glaring past her at the guy in the corner. Just as she got close to me, he suddenly stood up and stepped in between us like some kind of bodyguard. "Sir, we're in the middle of a meeting," he said with that same annoying fake smile. "Please leave." He even gestured toward the door like he was in charge. I didn't move. I just looked past him at Emily. "Do I need to leave?" I asked flatly. She immediately stepped around the guy and walked to my side, ignoring his outstretched hand. "Of course not," she said, then turned toward him and added, "Ryan, what are you still doing here?" That was the first time I heard the name. Ryan Kim. Apparently, her assistant's assistant. "I'm helping you with the meeting," he said awkwardly, scratching the back of his neck. "You don't need to be here," Emily replied coldly. "You're not even supposed to attend this meeting. You're not the assistant. You're the assistant to the assistant. Get out." You could practically hear his ego deflate. Everyone in the room was watching like it was a live reality show. He tried to make one last stand. "What about him?" he said, pointing at me. "He's not part of the company. Why can he stay?" Emily gave him a withering look. "Because he's my boyfriend," she said simply. Ryan's face turned white. He mumbled something, lowered his head, and shuffled out of the room like a scolded child. The rest of the meeting passed with awkward silence. I sat beside Emily without saying a word. I didn't need to. The storm was still coming. When the last person left, I pulled out my phone and placed it on the table in front of her. Open on the screen was the message, "I have a boyfriend. Let's delete each other." "Thanks." I didn't raise my voice. Didn't curse. Just said, "Explain." Emily stared at the screen, and for a moment, her pupils shrank like she'd seen a ghost. Then she turned and bolted out of the room. I followed. Down the hallway, past the rows of dark offices, until she finally stopped right in front of Ryan Kim. "Give me back my phone," she said coldly. Ryan hesitated. Then, like a guilty schoolboy, he slowly pulled her phone out of his pocket and held it out with trembling hands. Emily snatched it, unlocked it, scrolled straight to her blacklist and cursed. Loudly. For the first time ever, I saw her truly lose her temper. She turned the screen toward me. There were at least 6 blacklisted contacts, all men. Including me. "You went through my phone?" she barked at Ryan. "Who gave you permission?" "It was charging on my desk." Her voice echoed through the office floor, drawing curious glances from a few department heads packing up for the night. Ryan flinched like he'd been slapped. "I was trying to help," he mumbled. "Help? By getting me blacklisted by my business partners? Are you trying to bankrupt me?" she snapped. Her hand trembled as she stared at the names, all CEOs or high-ranking clients of Carter Group. I was about to comfort her when my phone lit up with messages from the same blacklisted contacts. Apparently, I wasn't the only one they reached out to. They were asking what the hell was going on with Emily and why they were suddenly blocked. Some even hinted they'd reconsider their partnerships. I sighed and walked away to start damage control, explaining things one by one and using the Carter name to smooth over the rough patches. Thankfully, most of them believed it was a misunderstanding. But not before one of them gently warned me, "You might want to keep an eye on who she lets into her circle." I didn't even need to respond. I was already planning it. By the time I returned, the office was in chaos. 2 uniformed police officers had shown up. Emily stood in the hallway, arms crossed, face hard as steel. Ryan stood nearby, trembling and looking like a deer about to bolt. "Emily," he stammered, you called the cops on me? You accessed my phone without permission and sabotaged business communications," she said flatly. "Yes. I did." Ryan practically threw himself at the officers. "Wait. It was a joke. We're close. We're childhood friends, please don't arrest me." One of the officers took a step back, looking more disgusted than sympathetic. "Sir, this isn't about friendship. You committed a crime." Emily didn't flinch. "Check his search history while you're at it. I think he's been messing with more than just phones." I just stood there, watching the entire train wreck unfold in real time, thinking one thing: I came here expecting to catch her cheating. Instead, I found a delusional ex-childhood friend with stalker tendencies and a serious hero complex. And she called the cops before I could even yell at her. Guess I chose the right woman after all. I thought that would be the end of it, honestly. I mean, Emily had called the cops on the guy, Ryan had been dragged out of the office like a disgraced intern, and I figured that once the law got involved, he'd learn his lesson and disappear into whatever dark little corner emotionally manipulative creeps crawl back to, but nah, of course not, that'd be way too easy, right? Just when I was starting to believe things were getting back to normal, Ryan somehow reappeared in the most ridiculous way possible, by sending me a friend request on WeChat using Emily's business card as the recommendation, and yeah, it was just as deranged as it sounds. I accepted the request mostly out of morbid curiosity and immediately got hit with a photo, a wide shot of a big round dinner table, everyone smiling like they were posing for a Thanksgiving Hallmark ad, and seated next to Emily was guess who? Ryan, looking smug as hell while Emily leaned towards someone spooning food into their bowl, except, spoiler alert, that someone wasn't Ryan. That didn't stop him from captioning the image with, "Guess what? Emily never loved you. We're officially meeting the parents to talk marriage today. Don't embarrass yourself." I didn't respond to the message, just stared at the image like, really? I didn't even feel rage this time, just exhausted, like watching a toddler throw themselves on the floor in a grocery store and scream for candy they're never getting. So instead of firing back some dramatic insult, I simply called Emily, and when she picked up, her tone was bright, relaxed, not at all like someone secretly cheating. "Hey babe, what's up?" she chirped, and I said, "Check your WeChat," kept my voice cool, controlled, and within seconds she gasped, cursed under her breath, and spat, "This guy's crazy, I'm sitting next to my niece. Ryan's across the table near my dad," then immediately added, "Wait, I'll send you proof," and not even a minute later I had a screenshot from her niece Chloe's Instagram story showing the same dinner table, same angle, and a very clear gap between Emily and Ryan, with Chloe grinning beside her aunt while Ryan was shoved to the end like an afterthought. "Come here," Emily texted, "I need you here to help shut this down for good." And of course I agreed, because I wasn't about to let some delusional man-child keep weaving fantasies unchecked, so I threw on something semi-formal and headed to the Grand Parkview Hotel, where Emily was already waiting at the lobby, arms crossed, still fuming, muttering, "He's seriously insane, sending you that photo like I wouldn't find out," then dragged me upstairs to the private dining room where both families were gathered. The moment I walked in, Emily's parents smiled and waved me over warmly. "James, come sit by me, Mrs. Carter beamed, motioning to the seat right next to her and Emily, and that's when the awkwardness started dripping like molasses, because Ryan's mom, seated on the opposite end with a face like she'd bitten into a lemon, squinted at me and asked loudly, "Who's this?" "Emily, you didn't tell us someone else was joining," and I didn't even get a chance to respond before she added, "How odd, bringing an outsider to a family dinner where we're supposed to discuss engagement," and I swear to God, the way she emphasized engagement made me want to spit out my water, but instead I smiled sweetly and said, "Oh, I'm not an outsider, I am Emily's boyfriend. Heard we were here to celebrate her supposed marriage to Ryan, so figured I'd better clear things up," and yeah, that got reactions. "All right, Mr. Carter's brows shot up, Mrs. Carter nearly dropped her wine glass, and Ryan's face turned the color of undercooked chicken as he choked on his soup and stammered, What engagement?" I never said, but his eyes darted everywhere like a guilty kid caught cheating on a test, and Emily didn't hesitate a second before standing up and declaring loudly, "Ryan and I were never a thing. I don't like him, I've never liked him, and I wish people would stop acting like I owe him something," and for a beat, there was stunned silence, broken only by Ryan's mom's forced laughter. "Come on, sweetie, we all know you two were close growing up," she said with that sugary condescension only boomers know how to weaponize. "You even promised to marry him when you were little." And that was the last straw. Emily practically slammed her hands on the table. "I never said that. You said that. You made up that whole childhood vow crap and used it to guilt-trip me for years. I never liked it, I never liked Ryan, and I'm done pretending like I did," and oh man, the temperature in the room dropped fast. Even Mr. Carter stepped in with that fatherly steel in his voice, "This ends now. Emily and James are together, and we support their relationship. Ryan's a good kid, but he's not the one, and Mrs. Kim was about to argue again when Mr. Kim elbowed her and muttered something about dropping it. Still, Ryan wasn't done. He stood up with trembling hands and whispered, "Emily, you really never liked me? All those times you helped me at school, fought people for me, those meant nothing," and Emily rolled her eyes so hard they nearly exited her skull. "I only stood up for you so your mom wouldn't yell at my mom again. You cried to your mom every time something went wrong. You think I was being nice? I was surviving, and honestly, I almost applauded right there, but the best part was yet to come, because Ryan's mom tried to spin it again, whining about childhood memories, about boys will be boys, and finally Emily just stood up, grabbed my hand in front of everyone, and said, "I'm not letting some manipulative fantasy ruin the life I've built. James is my fiancé. Ryan is a phase I never signed up for," and that's when the room went still like someone pressed pause on reality, and Ryan's entire face fell like a Jenga tower in a wind tunnel, and before anyone else could speak, he literally grabbed his coat, stormed out of the dining room, and slammed the door behind him. I turned to Mr. Carter to apologize for the chaos, but he just patted my shoulder and said, "No apology needed, son. If anything, thanks for helping us see the truth before it was too late," and even Mrs. Carter smiled like she'd just tossed an emotional vampire out of her home for good. Later that night, Emily leaned on my shoulder, sighed, and muttered, "I should have cut him off years ago. Guess I hoped he'd grow up," and I looked at her and said, "Some people don't grow up, they just grow bitter," and that's when I knew, no matter what happened next, at least we were finally on the same page, and no delusional childhood crush was going to ruin that again. I thought after that disaster dinner, the saga of Ryan Kim would finally die a quiet death. Maybe he'd move away, find a therapist, start a podcast or something, but nope, the guy apparently had one final card to play, and this time he wasn't just targeting us privately, he was dragging the internet into it. A few days before our engagement party, I started getting strange messages, at first from strangers, then from old friends, colleagues, even people I hadn't spoken to in years, all sending the same type of stuff. "Is it true you broke up a 10-year relationship? How could Emily cheat on her childhood sweetheart? Didn't know you were the side piece, bro." I scrolled through social media and realized we were trending well, not us exactly, but people labeled G. Walker and E. Carter were being slandered as the evil couple who destroyed a pure, decade-long love story between a misunderstood dancer and his destiny, and the worst part. Ryan never mentioned our names directly, but all it took was one teary-eyed live stream and a little breadcrumb trail through his old posts for the internet to put it together. The video was classic Ryan Kim, dim lighting, sad piano music playing faintly in the background, his voice shaking as he said, "No, I'm fine, guys, I'm really happy for her, it just hurts a little, you know. Watching someone you love marry someone else after you gave her your whole childhood," and then he wiped away a single perfectly timed tear like he'd rehearsed it a dozen times, followed by a dramatic sigh and the final nail in the coffin. "But it's okay, I'm focusing on dance now, she'd want me to be strong." Cue the music swelling and him launching into a mournful interpretive number that looked like Swan Lake had a breakup and started drinking again. The internet ate it up like starving raccoons in a dumpster fire. Comments flooded in calling us homewreckers, liars, manipulators, and worst of all, calling me a green tea gigolo, which was honestly impressive for how wrong and weirdly poetic it sounded. Emily's company took a hit almost instantly, her stock dipped, clients started pulling out of contracts, and even though she issued an official statement denying any relationship with Ryan, it was like yelling into a hurricane, because as usual, people online didn't want the truth. They wanted the drama, the betrayal, the righteous anger. I tried to stay calm, tried to support Emily while she worked herself ragged juggling crisis PR, internal shareholder meetings, and still finding time to text me things like, "I'm okay, don't worry about me," but I could see she was breaking, and it pissed me off because none of this was real, not the love story, not the heartbreak, just a grown-ass man throwing a tantrum because someone he liked in middle school didn't pick him 20 years later, and then something happened, something beautiful, chaotic, and poetic in the pettiest way possible. A video surfaced online, filmed secretly during that family dinner, probably by someone on Emily's side, and it completely flipped the narrative. The video was shaky and not great quality, but the audio was crystal clear, and in it, Emily was seen saying bluntly, I never liked Ryan Kim, ever. Not in school, not now. He's delusional and needs to stop, followed by Ryan's pathetic line, but why'd you defend me in school, and her ice-cold response, because your mom would yell at my mom if I didn't, and just like that, the internet switched sides so fast I swear some of them got whiplash. Suddenly, Ryan wasn't a tragic hero anymore, was a manipulative weirdo with boundary issues and a victim complex. And within hours his comments section turned into a war zone, with former fans saying things like, "Can't believe I defended this clown," and "Bro got ratioed by reality." He tried damage control, of course, deleted all his old posts, turned off comments, went private, then came back with another sad video where he whispered, "I never meant to hurt anyone," while wearing a hoodie and sitting in the rain like a budget music video extra, but no one was buying it anymore. I turned to Emily that night and asked, "Who recorded that clip?" and she smirked proudly, "My niece Chloe," she said. The vibe felt cursed, so she hit record just in case, and I swear I almost cried from laughter, because in the end, it wasn't PR teams or corporate lawyers that saved us, it was a 10-year-old with instincts sharper than Wall Street traders. The public apology Ryan eventually posted was so half-assed it read like an AI wrote it. "To those I may have accidentally misled, I'm sorry for the confusion," as if he'd just bumped into someone in a hallway, not torpedoed someone's reputation and nearly crashed a company. But the real kicker was when he tried to spin it again a week later by meeting with me in person at a cafe downtown, acting all sorrowful and misunderstood, saying crap like, "James, I'm not your enemy, I just wanted you to know the truth," and then pulling out an envelope full of old childhood photos of him and Emily, including one where she kissed him on the cheek at a birthday party when they were like, what, 7? And I just stared at him, completely deadpan, and said, "You really thought a picture of a kid's birthday party was gonna break us up?" And he blinked like I'd slapped him, then tried to double down, "She loved me once. She just forgot," and that was when I realized he didn't just want Emily, wanted the fantasy version of her he'd kept in his head for decades, the version that never grew up or chose someone else or told him to get lost. So I called his bluff, leaned in, and asked, "You do know there's a guy live streaming us from the next table, right?" And sure enough, he looked over and saw some awkward college kid fumbling to shut off his phone in panic, and Ryan's face drained of all color like someone just yanked the curtain off The Wizard of Oz. Seconds later, Emily burst through the cafe doors, furious and out of breath, yelling, "Don't you dare fall for any of this," then stormed straight to my side, gave me a kiss in front of everyone, and turned to Ryan with murder in her eyes. "One more stunt like this and I swear my lawyers will make sure you never dance again," and she wasn't bluffing. That night, Carter Group released a full report of everything Ryan had done, stealing her phone, faking messages, exploiting private family events for internet clout, and for once, the world actually paid attention to the facts. That's when Ryan disappeared for real, deleted all social media, vanished from the influencer world, and the next we heard of him, he was working some under-the-table gig in a club owned by one of the families he'd conned out of a fake engagement back in Michigan. And yeah, poetic justice tastes better than coffee. As for us, we moved forward with the engagement, and this time nothing and no one dared get in the way, because when the truth finally hits the algorithm, not even 1,000 sad dance videos can keep a lie alive. Just when I thought things had finally settled down, with Ryan Kim off the grid and Emily's company slowly recovering from the digital dumpster fire he'd set off, life decided to throw in one last plot twist, because apparently, the universe won't let a man enjoy peace for more than 3 business days, especially not before his engagement party. Everything was prepped and polished, the hotel ballroom was booked, the guest list confirmed, the menu finalized. I personally fought for the lobster, mac and cheese, and Emily was in full bride mode, bouncing between florists and stylists while reminding me every 30 minutes to hydrate and smile like I wasn't being prepped for battle. My parents were flying in, her parents were already in town, and everything felt weirdly perfect, which should have been my first red flag, because perfection is always just the calm before chaos. Sure enough, the day of the engagement party, as I was getting into the car with my parents to head to the Grand Parkview Hotel, a body slammed into the hood like a low-budget action movie stunt, and guess who it was? Ryan Kim, in the flesh, lying dramatically on the ground like he'd just been hit by emotional karma, his hair a mess and face pale as if he hadn't slept in a month, and before I could even say anything, he looked up at me like I was the villain in his telenovela and croaked, "Please just let my family go, we're sorry." I was halfway between calling 911 and laughing when my dad stepped out of the car first, looking at Ryan like he was some particularly annoying squirrel that chewed through the wires in his garage. "You're blocking my son's engagement," he said calmly. "Get up, or I'll call someone who'll make you wish you stayed down," and Ryan just whimpered something about the Carter family, crushing his parents' business, which made my dad snort. "Kid, your family's been sinking for years. You just ran out of people to scam," and that's when Ryan really lost it, grabbing my pant leg and crying, "It's not fair. Because of you, Emily won't help us anymore. We're broke. We're ruined," as if I personally robbed his house in the middle of the night. A few passers-by started filming, and I could already smell the clickbait headlines, "Engagement interrupted by bitter Exmoor at 6, so I yanked my leg back and asked point-blank, "Are you gonna move or should I get hotel security involved?" And he blinked at me, clearly caught between fight and flight, until my dad leaned down and whispered something that made the blood drain from his face. "You think Emily's dad is the only one who can crush you? Try crossing mine again and see who shows up at your next fake crying session," and boom. Ryan scrambled up and stumbled away, muttering, "Sorry," like a glitching robot, disappearing into the nearest alley like he was escaping Gotham PD. I turned to my dad like, "Okay, what did you say to him?" And the man just smiled like a mafia don and said, "I told him the Morgan family's been looking for him since Detroit." And I nearly choked because I thought that was a rumor, apparently not, and suddenly I was very glad I inherited that exact tone of voice. When we got to the venue, Emily ran up in heels and panic, clearly having heard about the incident, but before she could spiral I pulled her into a hug and said, "Your stalker tried to get run over for content again." My dad scared him off with mob-level threats. Everything's fine, and to her credit, she only needed 30 seconds and one mimosa to recover her glow. The party itself was intimate, just close friends, family, and a few VIPs from the Carter group, but the tension lingered like background noise because the Kim family hadn't RSVP'd and everyone suspected they'd try something, and oh boy, they did not disappoint. About halfway through dinner, right as the waiter brought out the champagne-glazed lamb, the ballroom doors opened and in waltzed Mrs. Kim in a blinding red dress like she thought this was her event, followed by her husband looking like he'd rather be anywhere else, and trailing behind them was Ryan, trying to act like he hadn't just been pavement furniture 2 hours ago. Emily froze mid-bite and looked at me like, "Do I stab or do you?" But before either of us could move, her mother stood up, heels clicking against marble like a warning bell, and said in a tone so cold it could freeze wine, "You weren't invited," and Mrs. Kim, ever the delusional soap opera matriarch, replied with a tight smile, "Oh come now, we're practically family, we've known each other for decades, I just came to bless the couple," and then she looked at me with a look that could peel wallpaper and added, "Though I admit, we were surprised Emily didn't choose someone with deeper history," and I swear the air dropped 10 degrees again. Emily was about to lunge when her father calmly put down his glass, stood up, and said, "Let's be clear, me daughter never chose your son. Not now. Not ever. And history doesn't matter when your side rewrites it every time they get caught lying," and Mr. Kim, clearly sweating bullets, tried to chuckle and said, "Let's not argue in front of the guests," but my dad had had enough, stood up next to him like Batman's accountant and said, "No one's arguing. We're stating facts. And the fact is, your son nearly tanked my future daughter-in-law's company, damaged her reputation, and played the victim while hiding financial crimes committed by your family. If you want to argue, we can do it in court," and that's when Mrs. Kim finally cracked, turning to Ryan with a hiss, "I told you not to mess with these people," and Ryan, ever the martyr, said something like, "I just wanted her to remember me," and Emily, God bless her, stood up, raised her champagne glass, and said, "I'll remember you as the most exhausting footnote in my dating history. Now get out," and the entire room applauded like it was a TED Talk. The Kim slithered away, humiliated and silent, and the energy in the room instantly returned to joy and celebration, with the DJ switching tracks and guests lining up to toast us like nothing had happened. Emily leaned into me later, tipsy and glowing, and whispered, "You think he's really gone this time?" And I kissed her forehead and said, "If not, I'll file a restraining order so fast his mom's Botox will freeze from stress." And she laughed so hard she almost spilled her wine on her gown. The rest of the night was perfect, no drama, no surprises, just love, family, and one long overdue sense of justice finally being served warm, right next to the champagne lamb. I should have known the final boss never truly dies until the end credits roll, because just when we were enjoying our post-engagement bliss, busy choosing flower arrangements and fighting over whether the wedding cake should be red velvet or triple chocolate, Ryan Kim made his grand return digitally, of course, because apparently even disgrace can't stop a wannabe influencer from opening his camera and talking to his fans. Like he's Gandhi with a ring light, I got the first ping while waiting in line for coffee, a DM from a stranger that read, "Bro, is this you?" followed by a screenshot of a live stream where Ryan sat in a dimly lit room, hair perfectly messy in that I suffer but make it aesthetic way, holding up a series of printed photos like they were FBI evidence. He wasn't saying names because he'd learned from the last disaster, but he was doing that insufferable, "Let me show you our past so you understand my pain" thing, panning slowly across images of two kids holding hands, laughing at a pool party, sitting under a tree with matching popsicles, and then the piece de resistance, a photo of 7-year-old Emily kissing toddler Ryan on the cheek at what looked like a family barbecue in 2002, his voice cracked, his eyes glistened, and he whispered dramatically, "She might not remember, but I do, I always will." Cue the live chat exploding with sob emojis and comments like, "How could she forget him?" and, "Some women only care about money, and I swear to God I almost threw my phone across the parking lot." I got home, showed Emily the clips, and she didn't even blink before saying, "He's so gross." That barbecue. I kissed him because his mom threatened to take my Barbie if I didn't, and that was it. Hat was the last straw, the final freaking olive in the martini of this man's delusion, so I told her we were ending it tonight, no more half measures, no more letting him manipulate narratives from behind a screen. We messaged one of our mutual friends who still followed Ryan's alt account and found out he was planning to go live with a truth session at 9 p.m. sharp. Perfect, we had time to prepare. I told Emily to get dressed and meet me at Blue Willow Cafe, the same place he tried to corner me months ago, and this time we weren't pulling any punches. At exactly 8:58 p.m., we walked in, ordered a pair of espressos, and took the table directly behind Ryan, who was already setting up his phone with a ring light clipped to the booth, humming to himself like he wasn't about to ruin his own life on camera. I pulled out my phone and quietly went live too, streaming to my private friends list with the caption, "Watch this guy implode in real time," and sure enough, at 9 p.m., Ryan began with that same breathy sigh, "Hey, everyone, tonight's stream is just me being vulnerable," and then the photos came out again, except this time he wasn't just reminiscing, was building a story, a twisted one, saying things like, "I didn't fight for her because I thought love was enough, but I was wrong, she was stolen from me, and that was my cue." I stood up, walked straight into his frame, leaned in, and said, "You done playing the sad violin yet?" And the chat went feral, exploding with confusion and gasps and a rapid flood of, "Wait, is that him?" and, "Oh my God, they're in the same room," and Ryan turned to me like I'd slapped him with a ghost, stammering, "James, this is private," and I smiled, sat down across from him, and calmly said, "Cool, so let's make it public," then turned my phone so both our streams saw each other. Emily slid in beside me like the queen she is and dropped a folder on the table, one that included a notarized statement from her childhood nanny, photos of the so-called kiss being orchestrated by Ryan's mother holding a Barbie hostage, and screenshots of old texts between Ryan and his family planning out how to reconnect through nostalgia. And the stream went absolutely nuclear. Ryan tried to backpedal, saying it was just symbolic, that he didn't mean to mislead anyone, but Emily cut in, "You never loved me, Ryan. You loved the version of me you invented because the real me never liked you. You were a neighbor, not a soulmate." And when I tell you the silence that followed was deafening, I mean even the espresso machine behind us stopped hissing. The chat erupted, half screaming, "She ate that," and the other half spam reporting Ryan's account faster than you could blink, and within 20 minutes, his stream was banned mid-sentence, just as he began one final plea about being a victim of miscommunication. We left the cafe with heads held high and zero regrets, but I guess Ryan's descent wasn't over yet. Because the very next day, his parents showed up at the Carter estate begging for mercy, claiming they had no idea what he'd been doing and asking Emily's father to help their son find work again, and Mr. Carter just laughed in their faces and said, "He's lucky we're not suing him for corporate defamation," and slammed the door before they could finish their speech about childhood bonds. I assumed that'd be the final nail, but nope. Ryan went and recorded a final apology video, where he stood in front of a lake at sunset, wearing all white like he was joining a cult, saying things like "I forgive them, even if they hate me," and tried to end it by throwing all the childhood photos into the water like some poetic release ritual, except it was windy and the photos blew back onto the dock, and someone filmed the whole thing from across the lake and posted it with the caption, POV, "You try to exit like a martyr and God says nah." The video went viral in the worst way possible. He became a meme overnight. And I have to admit even Emily's mom texted me a gif of the photo boomeranging back into his face with 10 crying emojis. Now his name's basically synonymous with red flags and emotional manipulation, and high school girls use "don't be a Ryan" as relationship advice on TikTok. Meanwhile, Emily and I, we're stronger than ever, planning our wedding, running her company together, and occasionally checking the meme pages for updates just to laugh and remind ourselves what we survived. And if he ever dares to show up again, well, let's just say I've already spoken to our lawyer about preemptive restraining orders, just in case the final chapter needs one last closure line before we roll the credits. By the time our wedding week finally rolled around, I'd already prepared myself mentally for a meteor to fall out of the sky, or for Ryan Kim to rappel down from the ceiling like some B-tier Marvel villain shouting, "You haven't seen the last of me," because honestly, with everything we'd been through, anything short of a lightning strike felt like child's play, but against all odds. The days leading up to the ceremony were eerily peaceful. Emily was radiant, her family was beaming, mine was relaxed, and even the wedding planner, who had the personality of a caffeine-fueled drill sergeant, had no complaints, which is how I knew something was definitely about to go wrong. But instead of a dramatic confrontation or a last-minute betrayal, what actually happened was so stupidly poetic I still laugh when I think about it, because on the morning of our wedding day, as I stood outside the venue taking in the soft breeze and mentally rehearsing my vows, I saw a familiar figure lurking just past the iron gate, wrapped in a black hoodie like a rejected Sith Lord, pacing with a nervous energy that practically screamed, "I'm about to embarrass myself." And yep, you guessed it, Ryan freaking Kim, back for one final act of emotional kamikaze. I didn't say anything at first, just watched as he muttered to himself, pulled out a folded piece of paper, read it dramatically, then stuffed it back into his pocket, clearly preparing for some grand speech that no one asked for. And just as he started walking toward the gate, one of the security guards stopped him with a firm hand and said, "Sir, your name's not on the list," to which Ryan dramatically responded, "But she needs to hear me out, I have something to say that could change everything," and the guard, bless his soul, just shook his head and radioed for backup like he was dealing with a wedding crasher on The Bachelor. I sighed, handed my coffee to my best man, and walked over, not because I was worried, but because I knew Emily would want me to handle this myself, and honestly, I kinda wanted to see what his final form looked like. So I approached, hands in my pockets, calm as ever, and said, "Really? You couldn't even let us have one peaceful day?" And he flinched like I'd shot him, then launched into this speech about fate, about how he had a dream last night where Emily was crying out for help, about how their souls were intertwined and I was just a temporary detour, and then he pulled out the folded paper, his vows, apparently, written, for the wedding that should have been, and started reading them like he was auditioning for America's Got Talent. I stood there for a good 30 seconds. Letting him dig his own grave, then finally interrupted, "Ryan, you're not the hero. You're not even the plot twist. You're the ad break no one wants to see," and his face contorted like he was trying not to cry, but also couldn't figure out how to look tragic and masculine at the same time. Just as I was about to signal security to escort him off the property, a sleek black car pulled up behind us and out stepped Emily, no makeup, hair in a bun, robe flapping in the wind like a war general, and the second she saw him, she sighed so loudly you could hear the exhaustion in her bones. "Are you kidding me, Ryan? Today of all days?" And he immediately ran to her like some Nicholas Sparks protagonist and said, "Just hear me out please, just let me say this and I'll leave." And Emily, ever the queen of one-liners, held up a hand and said, "No, I'm done listening. I've been listening to your delusions since middle school. I'm getting married today to the man I love, the man who's been honest, loyal, and never once tried to emotionally blackmail me using childhood photos," then turned to me with the softest smile and added, "You ready, and that's when Ryan finally dropped the paper, muttered, "I hope you both regret this," and stormed off like a wet cat, disappearing into the distance as a golf cart from the venue casually followed behind to make sure he didn't sneak back around like some desperate NPC. The rest of the day went exactly the opposite of how he probably imagined. Emily walked down the aisle like she owned the sun, our families cried the happy kind of tears, the vows went off without a hitch, and when the officiant finally pronounced us husband and wife, there wasn't a single doubt left in the world that we were exactly where we were meant to be. At the reception, guests toasted us with champagne and stories. Chloe, our MVP niece who accidentally saved us with a viral video, danced like she was in a Disney Channel movie, and Emily's dad pulled me aside, looked me in the eye, and said, "You know you've got the entire Carter clan behind you now, right?" And I nodded, fully aware that marrying into this family came with both power and responsibility, mostly the responsibility to never let someone like Ryan Kim anywhere near us again. Later that night, Emily and I stood on the rooftop of our suite overlooking the city lights, barefoot and tipsy from the after-party, and she leaned her head on my shoulder and whispered, "Do you think he'll try again?" And I smiled, wrapped an arm around her, and replied, "If he does, I'll send him a fruit basket with a note that says, 'Please stop embarrassing yourself,'" and she laughed so hard she nearly dropped her wine glass. A week later, a blurry photo of Ryan working at a food truck in some random town started circulating online with a caption that said, "Local sad boy legend spotted flipping burgers, still talks about his soulmate." And honestly, that was the most peace I'd felt in months, knowing he was finally out of our story. Reduced to background noise and old screenshots, we moved on, we lived well, and most importantly wrote our own narrative without letting anyone else hold the pen. If there's one thing I've learned from all of this, it's that love isn't about history or sentiment or forced fairy tales, it's about two people choosing each other every damn day. No matter how messy the past is, no matter how loud the background gets, and no matter how many times someone tries to turn your life into their tragedy. And as I looked at Emily, my wife, my partner, my best friend, I knew one thing for sure: whatever storm comes next, we'll face it together, hand in hand, not because we're perfect, but because we're real, and real beats fantasy every single time.